I'm on a streak of messing up the intro because I had our pictures up the entire time once we started the stream. So normally I have us off and it's just the logo. The music comes in and then we come in and
you're off your game lately, man.
I've been sick, man. I'm better today, like we were just saying. I'm better, but I don't know if I can blame it on the sickness or if it's just
you can. Why not?
User error. Got some good people already built it on the afternoon on a Friday. Got a little group building in the chat. So that's good. Because lots of football news today. Crazy football news. One really cool thing and one that's very interesting, and we'll see how it plays out. But Taulia Tagovailoa has entered the transfer portal, and that's been rumored for a while, correct? That he might do that?
Yeah, I heard about that a couple weeks ago and pretty much reported what I heard at the time, which was that was a big reason why he opted out of the bowl game is because of this plan that he and his family were putting together to potentially enter the portal and apply for a waiver for another year. I mean, he's used all his eligibility, so he'd have to get that. But if he were to, if he were to get the waiver,
was that Derek Queen?
That was Bob Stone, actually.
Okay,
that was Malachi. That was Malachi Palmer texting me that Derek Queen is still coming. I think, I'm pretty sure their hope is get this waiver, go to Miami, not only be near your brother, but be in the same market where you're slinging it around for the U on Sunday and he's, Saturday, and then he's playing Sunday. It's a hell of a branding / marketing opportunity if you're a guy who's not sure if you're going to make the NFL. Maybe you make $2 or $3 million right there. That's life changing, especially if you're not going to make millions in the NFL. So I think that's their hope. Whether they get the waiver, I don't know. It's normally I'd say no chance because there's no precedent that I know of. I've talked to a few people. I don't think there's much precedent. He doesn't. He played 5 years as a freshman. The limit is 4 games. Usually, if you're going to apply for a waiver there, it'd because there was some sort of paperwork error or something else. And so we'll see. I'm sure they have a great lawyer lined up. And, you just never know these days with the wild, wild west of college sports and eligibility and transferring.
Well, I saw that he played in 5 games that year. And in 2 of those games, he only played 2 snaps. I do feel bad for him in that regard. He loses a year of eligibility for that. It's kind of shitty. The question is, if they say, okay, on this one, then the next one, do they say, all right, he played 5 games, but he got 15 snaps in each one. And, it's 6 games is okay. Yeah. How do they do that, right?
Yeah, that's a bad precedent to set. And then you're going to have everybody on earth trying to get 14 years of eligibility. But again, money and high-powered lawyers can do crazy things, especially right now in this situation where there's no rules really, or the rules are changing daily. You had to sit out. Now you don't have to sit out. It's, it'll be interesting. It's also interesting to see how Maryland fans react. Like, I think there's a chunk that are like, okay, he did a lot of great things for us. I hope he does well. And then there's some who are a little salty about the whole, how it's ending.
It'll be tough to see him play for another school, but I'm ready to move on. I was one of the people when he announced that he wasn't going to be, or I don't even know if he announced it. I guess the school announced it, that he wasn't going to be playing in the bowl game.
Yeah.
I was okay with that because I'm excited to look to the future, see Billy and Cam, and they both played well enough to give some excitement level. I was cool with that. I'm happy for that. So, I don't wish anything bad for Taulia. He had 4 really good years at Maryland, and he'll always, have the Terps record book for a long time, probably. And
probably forever.
You're going to need somebody to come in and play for that many years, and they're going to have to be a 4A player, baseball reference, not quite NFL, but really good college player to play for 4 years like that to rack up those numbers.
I think part of that saltiness from the fans is also just a little bit of regret that he never pulled off any of those big wins. You know,
Yeah.
that's the asterisk that'll always
Yeah.
be next to his name. So, people just over the years got a little, as much, even the ones who appreciated how much he did for Maryland, which is quite a bit. Who knows where Loxley would be today without him. They still became frustrated by the big game, failures.
Yeah. Well, he 4 pretty good years, obviously. Maryland's never won 3 bowl games in a row before, and now they have. And so he's done that. He did not get the big win. And there's some negatives to his game too. The people talk often about the mental lapses where it seemed like he would just fold under pressure when things went wrong, when they got blown out a lot of times. The seeming unwillingness to run, which probably hurt the offense. He was afraid to get hurt. There's some of those things. So, maybe there's an opportunity for improvement in some areas.
So where does he end up on the all-time Maryland quarterback? I mean, I probably shouldn't discuss this because I'll be spoiling whatever I'm going to eventually write about it, but that'll be summertime.
Yeah, it's tough because he's racked up the stats, and if you're a stat nerd, that's very important to you. And it is important, and he did win the 3 bowl games. However, he's not the most talented by far. There's probably maybe close to 10 that are more talented. I mean, they had a guy finish second in the Heisman, albeit in the 50s.
Yeah.
But, and then, they had the string of guys in the 80s. They had Hill and McBrien in the early aughts. So
on one hand, the stats far outdistance the accomplishments. On the other hand, Maryland doesn't have that good of a list of quarterbacks. It's pretty slim overall, so it's tough. And most of the guys who were good were only good for maybe a year, maybe 2. So you're also comparing 4 years against 1 or 2 as starters.
Right. If you look back at like
Boomer, how many years was Boomer the guy for? 2?
2, I think, and his numbers are not impressive at all. Because
I think that's the case with O'Donnell, Reich. I think a lot of those guys are 1 or 2
all
years
those guys. Yep.
So he's
because
up there.
They waited their time and then they started. That used to be the way things went, right?
Yep.
And it still does happen that way sometimes, but they waited their time and then they only got their 1 or 2 years as the starter, and the game was very different, obviously, as well.
Yeah.
Not as much passing, so it's really hard to compare against eras like that with these guys.
And if he does go to Miami, somehow miraculously gets this waiver and goes there, what do you think the average Maryland fan is rooting for, against, or neutral?
I would think a lot of people are like what I expressed, where they're sort of thankful for his time here. Yeah. They're not going to watch his games and root him on to the Heisman or anything.
Not going to be throwing up the U every weekend.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's going to be doing that, but I don't think anybody's going to be really rooting against him if it's Miami. If he transferred to a Big Ten school or Penn State, right, like then people will be rooting against him, or Virginia because they're playing Virginia.
And you got to keep in mind, he could have transferred 2 different times. He toyed with it during his career. Could have got a bunch of money. Right? Last time was Auburn. Before that, who knows the other time? But he left a lot of money on the table to stay at Maryland. So, for people who think he's like a traitor or whatever, you have to keep that in mind, I think. And it is a business now, like it or not. Yeah. So
I've made my stance well known about the trade. I'm not going to get into it. I'm not going to get.
You sense my fear.
Yeah, but he, as the rules as they exist, he's got. You can't hate him for.
Don't hate the player, hate the game, right?
Yeah, he's doing what he's doing within the structure. The structure sucks. We won't get into that, but he's doing and like you were saying, this might be his one chance to make millions a year, because he's going to go to the NFL. Is he going to get drafted? Maybe he's a marginal draft pick, almost for sure too small to be like a long-term starter and get the mega millions. Is he going to be on like minimum contracts, if that, and how long will he stick?
Yeah. A good outcome for him is a nice little run as a backup. I think realistically.
Yeah, Jonathan Peak in the chat says Scarbath. That's who I was talking about, who finished second in Heisman in the 50s. But yeah, so people are chiming in on that. And then the other big news coming back, you see my headline. I got a compliment on that in the from Gary Simpson. Your title's amazing, The Wizard of Oz. Wait, hang on. I almost said his name wrong. Aazaar Abdul-Rahim. I almost said Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf. The old basketball player, Chris Jackson.
Or the basketball player Abdul-Rahim. What was his first name?
Oh yeah,
Sharif Abdul-Rahim.
Rahim played at Cal.
Yep, was a star in the NBA for a while. But yeah, that's huge news. I mean, it's funny. I spoke with him fairly recently. In retrospect, now I think I have an idea why. But he's been a BC the past 3 seasons, I believe it is. He's defensive coordinator there. It's a tough job, especially now with NIL. I mean, Boston College just, if you're looking for a football program that competes, Jesus Christ.
Is it Derek Green?
Yeah, I'll call him back though.
Okay.
For that competes in a high level conference, which the ACC in the broad scheme, is, but it has the resources and the NIL and all that sort of stuff. The fan base are more of a FCS, maybe not FCS level, but small private academic school in a very much not college football media market without a big alumni base. All that stuff is tough gigs. So I think he'll come back and recruit well at Maryland. He recruited really well earlier in his career there. He has a ton of connections locally. Obviously, he's a good coach. Has produced guys like J.C. Jackson, Darnell Savage. So to me, it's a home run hire.
Yeah, and I saw that, and I immediately got excited about recruiting for 2025. They need the money. If they can get the money between Locks and Aazaar, wow, they could.
I think they're boosting the money situation as we speak. I've heard that they've been making some moves to upgrade the NIL situation, which is huge. Obviously, when you look at, like Ryan Day saying, I need 13 million. I think Locks would really like to have the scenario. Of course he would, but that's probably what he envisions, that 10 to 12 million. Yeah, that's just the way it is now. Everything is NIL. Maryland's hiring new NIL staffers, bringing in Blueprint Sports to oversee this new collective, and that drives the whole thing right now. So, but they didn't have a great NIL situation last year, and Locks has a really good eye for talent, so they don't all have to be 4 or 5 stars. And I think Aazaar has also got a good eye for talent. They have, and the other thing is they have some pretty good young corners in the program for him to work with. So, like Perry Fisher looked really good in the bowl game, brought in the
really
kid from Bowling Green, the transfer, who's should be pretty good. So, I think it's him being willing to come to Maryland now, to me, is kind of a symptom of the forward progress that the program has, right? Like a guy like that, if Locks is on shaky ground, or even if the program is just kind of middling, flatlining, whatever, I don't know if he takes the job. So I think it's a good sign that a guy like that wants to come back and coach at Maryland.
There were some rumors that the last time the relationship ended on shaky grounds. Is that true, or is it just message board fodder? And if so, they must have worked it out. Do you know anything about that?
It's definitely true. Like,
okay.
I'm trying to remember the exact timeline. I believe it was when Locks took over, right? I think Aazaar was here, was a holdover, and wasn't retained. But in the past, that's that's been over for 2 years. I'm not just saying it. Like I've spoken to people, I think at least 2 or 3 years now, that they've been cool. So it's kind of reminiscent of Josh Gaddis, right? They had that falling out after
And
Alabama.
Mhm.
Loxley seemingly thought he had him hired, and he skips out on that job at the last minute. They patch things up, and so it's pretty much the same storyline almost.
Well, I went because I got kind of excited about recruiting with those guys for 2025. I went and I found every player in the 24/7 rankings that is rate in DC and Maryland that has a rating so far. So I'm going to pop this up here.
Spreadsheet time. Let's
Spreadsheet
go.
time.
Now we're getting crazy.
Spreadsheet time. So there they are. Two of them have been committed. They're 28 players. Two of them are committed, one to Ohio State, one to North Carolina. But one thing you notice by position, there's a lot of defensive backs in there at the top and all throughout, cornerbacks and safeties. There's a lot of them.
That's really coincidental because yesterday I was talking to somebody over at Maryland, and I asked about 2025 recruiting, and that was the answer is that at least defensively, it's a very good year locally for cornerbacks. And then,
well, yeah, look at that.
So I don't know, maybe somebody was trying to hint something to me. I don't know, but yeah, that it's a really strong. I mean, for those who aren't watching, how many of those guys are 4 stars? There's the top number 1 guy is a corner, Fahim Delane. I don't think they have much of a shot there. Strangely, he's a 5-star from Good Counsel. The weird thing is he was had a ton of Maryland games last year and then recently announced his list and they weren't on it. But it's early. Maybe you get back on there. Okay, Noah Winston from Gonzaga, they really have been recruiting really hard. Tariq Heyer from St. John's, Heyer. He was supposed to actually announce a few weeks ago his decision and then decided to postpone, but he's been at pretty much every game. He's the guy they're in on. So, yeah, I mean, and it's not just going to recruit defensive backs, obviously. A lot of it is geographic rather than what position you coach, but that'll definitely be his focus.
Yeah, I noticed also that there are 2 players in the 2025 class that have Maryland listed as warm in the rankings. You can be cool, warm, warmest, or favorite is the highest one. So there are 2 that are warm. Tariq Heyer was one of them, and also Malik Washington, the quarterback out of Spalding.
Yeah, Washington is a Brian Williams production. He's the main recruiter in the Howard County area, and I think Montgomery. So he's the guy there. Locks obviously is involved. I mean, he's the unquestioned number 1 guy on their big board. Malik Washington. He announced his top 6. Was that before or after our last show? I can't remember.
I don't remember if it was before or after, but I remember seeing.
Sure, it was after. It was so it's Maryland, Penn State, Virginia Tech, Syracuse, Texas A&M, and Oregon. Thank you. Yeah. Yep. So, and I think Maryland, as of right now, I think they have as good a shot as anybody with them. But
they need the money. We're getting some good comments in here. DMVU posted, there's a ton of players not on here too. Yes, of course, there are players. They're going to be good players, but 24/7 hasn't rated everyone yet. They kind of do that throughout the year. So as those other good players get rated, they'll get sprinkled in here. These are the ones that have a rating so far. So
yeah, I think Abdul-Rahim is kind of like almost a football version of Tony Skinn. Young guy, tons of local connections, very smooth, knows how to operate, knows how to work relationships, so I think, and that's a compliment. Tony Skinn was pretty much the engine behind Maryland basketball recruiting before he left. So I think there's somewhat of a parallel between those 2 guys.
And then Locks, of course, is Locks. So you get the combination of those 2 guys, and you start thinking about the possibilities of getting back into the top 25 and maybe even higher if they can get that NIL money.
Yeah, it's amazing the difference a month and a half can make, right? 2 months, month and a half, whatever it was ago, we were sitting here, people were calling for Locks to be fired, like a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to go 5-7 after starting 5-0, this and that. And I don't know if I've ever seen a season, the vibes turn around so drastically so fast.
Well, it's about to happen in basketball too, Jeff.
And what's going to spur that development, Larry?
They're going to win a lot of games.
Oh. Okay.
That's what's going to happen.
I mean, I keep waiting for them. I don't know about winning a lot. I keep waiting for them to turn it on and at least hit that streak, at least give you that little Maryland, the classic Maryland tease, where you win. But this team, I don't know. I don't know if they'll do it or not. It's when you're that bad at shooting, it's really hard to mask.
Well, they're going to start being good at shooting. That's what's going to happen.
They're
just going to start making shots. That's all.
I mean, it happened last year to an extent. Remember how bad they were early on shooting? And then they were never red hot, but they were pretty respectable for like the final half of the season.
3 years ago.
That was with Don Carey on the roster and Ian Martinez and Hakeem Hart. That's the difference.
But 3 years ago, it was very similar as well. Terge's penultimate year. They started off really bad, and then they had that crazy streak starting in February and made it to the tournament and to the round of 32.
Yeah.
So
we'll see. I don't, they have two really talented potential star players. One of them is playing like a star every night. The other one has been slumping a little bit lately. And then there's just not much else there. It's not like a situation where you can point to a young guy who's getting more minutes and starting to emerge or this or that. You're still hoping for Geronimo and these other role players. And obviously the biggest thing would be the two freshmen, DHS and Kaiser, still haven't really come into their own.
Yeah,
we'll see.
We got a good comment back to football from Ty B. Do you think AAR brings any DBs from BC and really anybody from Boston College? Is there anybody he might bring with him? Because that could be Maryland still needs some transfers, so maybe that's where they get him from.
Yeah, I asked a really good source about that today. I don't think so. I think he has a really good relationship with Jeff Hafley, the head coach there, gave him a good opportunity as defensive coordinator. And so you never know. People change their plans all the time as things get real. But as of today, I think his plan is to leave their roster alone. But we'll see. I mean, honestly, BC isn't really loaded with talent. I doubt there's a ton of guys you would really want.
I mean, out of Power 5, there's going to be Power 5 capable players. So
sure, there's going to be a few sprinkled for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think it's huge. It's good for him. The guy's a local native, right? And he's been there for 2 or 3 years, doing long distance with his family. Like his wife and kids have been back in DC, so he gets to reunite with his family, come home, have a higher level position at Maryland than last time as co-defensive coordinator, and jumping on what looks like a program that's headed in a really good direction. So,
what about the offensive side of the ball? Is there the coaching changes? I haven't really heard much, and maybe I just haven't seen it. Sumlin's issue, is he coming back or?
I don't know yet. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't when you add what happened, and then also just the fact that he's Kevin Sumlin. He's in his 50s, has all the money in the world. I think he got a $20 million buyout from Texas A&M. So a guy like that, if he's taking a job like he did at Maryland, usually it's like a short-term tie over till I figure out what I want to do next. He's not like, I'm just going to buckle down and spend the next 10 years as Maryland's tight ends coach. So it wouldn't shock me if he didn't come back, but I haven't heard anything of substance yet. I'm sure there will be other, I'd heard there would be some changes. There will be other, whether it's one or two, I don't know. Names, can't really put names out yet, but I mean, it pretty much goes without saying there's going to be turnover, yearly.
Yeah. All right. Well, those are the two big developments. Taulia Tagovailoa to the transfer portal, maybe to Miami. And Aazaar Abdul-Rahim coming back to coach the Terps, big-time recruiter, and give some real hope for a potentially really good 2025 class if they can get some NIL going in there with them to back them.
And we'll be covering all the recruiting developments, so stay on the site.
And also, there will be a Derek Queen update coming
within the next three months. I would say it's probably safe.
Next 3 months.
Yeah.
There you go. You heard it here. Derek Queen will commit within 3 months. When's the last signing day? It's late January, right?
I should know that, but I don't because it's so rare that there's not a lot of spring signees lately. Here, I'll tell you.
Is it? I was going to say, so we'll know the last possible day it could be, but he doesn't even have to commit by then. He could commit after that even too.
I think it's going to be at Hoop Hall in a couple weeks. Division One. So the basketball is not till April 17th.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know it was that late. Okay.
Yep.
All right. There you go, guys. Quick show today to cover those two big football developments. Good luck to Taulia on his way. Thank you for your time spent at Maryland. And welcome back, Aazaar. Very happy to have him back. And I guess, barring any other unforeseen big developments, like a 5-star basketball player commits, we'll be back next Wednesday at 7:30. This is IMS Radio. See you guys.
Have a good weekend.